name's Scott Fromey and welcome to the Backwoodsman Institute. Well, in this video I'd like to show you guys how I strip the veins off of a feather in order to use it for fletching. And before I get started with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about feathers and what type of feathers I'm using for most of my fletching. The best feathers to use are the feathers off of the wing feathers. They're the most durable and they take the most punishment. So you can use feathers from any type of bird, but the best feathers are from the bigger birds. You obviously can't be using hawk and eagle feathers because they're protected by the law. So what's accessible to us is like turkey, goose, duck, chicken. That kind of size bird works really well. Like I said, if you're going to be keeping, to keep the wing feathers for use for fletching. So if you got you're keeping the wing feathers, don't mix and match. Keep your right wing feathers in one bag and your left wing feathers in another bag. The two can't work together. You can't mix and match and put them on an arrow shaft. It just won't fly right. So let me show you a little difference between a left and right feather. Here's a feather from the right wing and here's one from the left wing. You can see the angle in which they kind of turn. So, and even the way they're cupped is different. So that's why you can't mix and match. It'll make the air flow different direction and throw your shot off a little bit. The other thing too, not only can you not mix and match left wing with right wing, you really shouldn't mix your veins. Here you got the narrow vein is a anterior vein and the bigger vein is a posterior vein. So you don't want to mix and match the two veins. So whenever you split them, keep them separate also. As far as the wing feathers are going, you have two main types of wing feathers. You got your primary wing feathers and your secondary wing feathers. The primary wing feather is the feathers that come from the very end of the wing. And they're that little, it's hard to display, right at that little elbow piece. It's just the very end of the wing. And that's where, these are the ones on the very edge, and they're the ones that take the most abuse and punishment when they're flying or moving. So they're going to be stronger than your secondary. See if I can't show off. Here would be a primary, and you can see that the anterior vein is not as big as your posterior vein. So here is your secondary wing feather. So this secondary wing feathers are the ones that come up into this part of the wing. Both work, but the primary wing feather is going to be your strongest one, and that'll take more of the abuse from rolling around in your quiver or shooting over the top of your knuckle or off a shelf. And there again too, I don't mix and match them. I keep my primaries and my secondaries separate also. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show how I take the vein off the feather. Now, I know most of the time you've seen where you take a knife and split that down and then sand off a lot of the pith and the part of that arrow, but I used to do that years ago when I first started messing with keeping my own arrows and making my arrows using my own fletching. And it was a royal pain. And I just can't imagine how a primitive man would do the same thing with a little maybe a piece of flint or something. Well, this had to be a different way. So after some pretty extensive research, I came across a method in which they strip the vein off of it. I'm going to go ahead and show how I pull that, separate that off. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just starting about an inch down from the end, and I'm kind of tearing it and peeling it, and I'm using the one hand to guide it a little bit. See if I can't get it started real good here. There's probably different ways. I used to be really good at it where I did a lot of them, and I can peel it pretty easy. But with a little bit of practice, you know, it goes fairly well. I use the one hand to hold it and keep it pretty close to where my tear is at, so I can control the tear. And I'm just separating it off of that shaft. So really, once I get down, okay, you can see how, let me put this back a little closer. You can see how I just started, like I said, about an inch down from the very top, and just started peeling it away. Now to get it started, you know, the first couple of inches are going to be the hardest part to get going. But once you get going, you know, if you just put like constant pressure on it, and you can control the tear, you know, with your one hand, but you can basically you're just peeling it away from the shaft. So I'll just go ahead and peel it on down. Like I said, I'm trying to hold it closer to the camera, but a lot of times I steady it maybe on my chest a little bit, and then hold it with my left hand. I'm right-handed, and then I just pull with steady pressure on down. And once I pull it all the way off, which there you have it now. If you look, here's my vein. It's basically, other than if you wanted to cut and shape it, you know, now it's ready to go to be glued onto your shaft. And you see there's no pith on it, nothing to be cleaned off. It's just nice and neat. Makes a good glue joint on there, and it's ready to go. So that's how I go ahead and strip my veins off of my feathers. And you end up, if you strip, you know, both sides, if I can't show this, here's what you end up with. Just the centerpiece of it. There's no cutting or nothing like that. I have done it, like here's an example of like a Native American, more like a Western type of arrow, and I put them on there. This fletching was probably about, I'd say 5.5, 6 inches. From studying native type of arrows, most of their fletching was anywhere from 5 to 7 inches. And the earlier arrows, the feathers were a little taller, and they, over time, realized that it doesn't take a very tall fletch, you know, to do its job, because all the fletching is going to do is to slow the back end of the arrow so that it doesn't pass up the front end of the arrow. So it really don't take that much feather to do that. You see that here I glued them on and then wrapped them with sinew, and then when I trimmed them, I left the little tails on the end of it, kind of for decoration. I seen that on some of the Western Plains type of arrows and thought I'd give it a shot at it, but just for the heck of it. But anyways, that's the gist of it, and that's how I go about stripping the veins off of my feathers, getting them ready for fletching. So you guys learned a little bit, try it. You'll be amazed how much nicer and easier this is to work with than to go ahead and cut them down the center. So catch you out in the woods.